everyone, Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you as always for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football. Pete Nakos, Jamie Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, it's time! 3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game! Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni! Float game for the win! Taylor's gone! Come on, touchdown, Indy! Woo! IU! America! They got a football team now!
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Wednesday. That means a visit from our good friend Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Jim. How are you?
Cannot complain. How are the Sox doing? Where's my
they're on the same pace as last year. They're 4-12, and that projects to a 41-win season, just like they had last year.
Well, it's better than going down, I guess. At least it's better than going down. What are they going to do? I mean, is the owner ever going to acknowledge that he needs to produce, or is he just going to keep letting them suck? I mean, they can't be making money. I guess they can be from TV, but other than that, who's going to go watch crap?
Not me. I'm not giving him any money till he sells the team. Do you know the Ishbia family? There's a guy named Matt Ishbia. He's a former Michigan State basketball walk-on. His family's made a bunch of money in the mortgage business. Anyway, he bought the Phoenix Suns a couple of years ago, and he's got a brother named Justin who also is a billionaire, and they've been buying up minority shares of the White Sox. I read yesterday they actually own more shares than Reinsdorf now. And the feeling is eventually they will take over the team, but Reinsdorf's not ready to give it up yet. So,
well, if they have more shares, how is that not the case already?
Because when the original White Sox ownership deal was struck, I think it was set up that Jerry Reinsdorf would always be in charge until he didn't want to be anymore. I don't know.
Well, that's a great gig, I guess. Why would he want to when he sucks? I mean, every year you're putting out a bigger stamp and saying, I suck, I'm terrible.
You're changing the legacy of your life as an owner of the guy who owned the Bulls when they won 6 NBA titles with Michael Jordan to the guy who owned the Bulls and the worst Major League Baseball team over the last 20 years. But I don't know.
I did have the opportunity to see Michael Jordan take batting practice at the old Comiskey Park.
Oh, wow.
When he was going through his midlife crisis or whatever. It was pretty good. He wasn't at the plate. They had him moved out, I think, to just in front of the pitcher's mound. He hit a couple off the old second level there at the old Comiskey.
They still talk about him in Birmingham when he played down there.
Oh, I bet.
And Terry Francona, the Reds manager, was his manager at Birmingham. He still talks about him, and I wish I would have got to see him play. Unfortunately, they're not in the same league as the Louisville franchise, but it was quite a happening.
Absolutely. Lots happening too on the basketball side of things. A big-time head-to-head recruiting battle between Indiana and Kentucky. It was great just because it was a heads-up battle between Indiana and Kentucky. kind of sparking the fire ahead of the series resuming next season. It's funny because, boy, if you go over on the Kentucky boards, it's like looking at the Indiana boards when Mike Woodson was here. Boy, there was a lot of people not happy. Then you've got, oh, well, we didn't even know Indiana was still around and yada, yada. Oh, I can't wait till you come Rupp Arena. So this, that. I'm like, that's what you want. I love that. Love that. That's why there's no way that series should have ever stopped. And John Calipari should have been, I don't know. He needs to be flogged for being allowed to be able to do that. And what's the AD at UK?
Mitch Barnhart.
He is the one that actually needs to be kicked in the ass because he had the authority to do that or not do that, and he cowered to Calipari and canceled the Indiana-Kentucky series because he was gutless. And I'm sorry to say that. I know he's a nice guy and he does great at his job, and I don't really mean that truly, but that was a gutless decision to me because you're taking away the Yankees and the Red Sox. I mean, why? Why would you do that? It was just, I mean, I know why. Calipari had that winning streak going. Indiana was going to have the number one team in the country coming into Rupp Arena next year, and he didn't want that to be his loss, baby. I'll always believe that personally.
Yeah, I'm more of the belief that Calipari wanted to create separation from Indiana and a lot of other programs, and he was successful at it. Of like,
yes, he did.
Up here and you're down here, and we don't need to play you, and we're going to play in these events that you're not a part of, and we're going to recruit players that you don't recruit. And Indiana allowed it to happen. So I give credit to Scott Dolson and Mike Woodson to get the series going again. But it's up to Indiana now to, make it a series, not go down there and get beat by 30 the way they got beat by Auburn and Arizona and Kansas and some of these teams they played on the road. So, it's a nice.
They have to be competitive in all these. They have to now become. Yeah. They don't have to win them, but you have to be able to win them.
You have to start winning them by the second or third year. I mean, as I remember it, it's going to be in Rupp, and then the next game's going to be in Lucas Oil, right?
I think it will not come to Assembly Hall until the year 2089, I think. Just after when Indiana football plays Notre Dame.
And that was Calipari flexing again, saying of
course
we're going to do this, we're going to do it on our terms. And so, until Indiana
I said that Calipari will set it up to where he won't be there when the game goes to Assembly Hall.
Right.
And I didn't expect for him to be gone already before the series started, but I knew that he would not be there when they played at Assembly Hall because he could not have taken that. Can you imagine the roasting that would have been like for John Calipari to step back in Assembly Hall? I would have actually enjoyed seeing that. That would have been, I don't know if there would have been ever anything previously to match that.
Well, really, it's the second mess he left behind, because not only did he ruin that series, but he also helped lead to the demise of the Derby Classic, because he would never let Kentucky players come play here, and the crowds got diminished, and the tournament went away the game went away a few years ago and hasn't come back yet, and they kissed his butt on that a number of ways. One is they invited his son, who wasn't near good enough to play in it. I think it was the year that might have been the year. No, it was before Romeo. But anyway, he played in the Derby Classic, and it was like an olive branch to Cal. Like, we'll let your son play. Will you please send us some of your players? And he rarely did, and that led to the end of the Derby Classic. So he was never about what traditions were here. He was about how he wanted to do things and create this mythology about, Kentucky basketball being a direct flight to the NBA and make zillions of dollars. And some of that worked and some of it didn't. And in the end, he found out that finally Kentucky fans woke up and said, hey, why don't you win an NCAA tournament game? We don't care about the NBA draft.
Yeah, he didn't do other than in the early years. Well, I mean, he had that run.
First 5 or 6 years were great, and then after that, after they lost in the Final Four with the undefeated team, they got the Elite Eight once, but for the most part, it was disappointment.
Absolutely, I agree to that, and I cannot wait for this series to resume. It's going to be a tough road to hoe for Indiana and Darian DeVries. They go into Rupp Arena next year, not even knowing what their team is going to be like. But I think no matter what, I think that when this is all said and done, they will be in a much, much better position to go in there, compete than they would have been if this change had not been made.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana's already set up a tougher non-conference schedule than they had last year for sure. I mean, they're playing Marquette in Chicago, and Marquette's closer to Chicago than Bloomington is. I'm sure the fan divide will be half and half. They're playing Louisville and Indianapolis. Louisville fans will make sure they get half the tickets there, and they're playing UK in Rupp Arena. So really 3 games, none of them will be considered a home court advantage, all against teams that made the NCAA tournament last year. So they've set up 3 hard non-conference games already, which is more than they set up last year, other than the Bahamas.
Yeah, and that was just by happenstance that they could just add that and not have to worry about it. But not only, I was surprised to see the Louisville edition with Kentucky already being on there, because that's you're recruiting. Well, you're recruiting against everybody, especially nowadays.
Right.
You're really recruiting against the teams that are closer to you for the in-state talent. And I guess it's not such a big deal, though, because you're not pulling in as much of the in-state talent as you used to. So it's not that big of a deal. What do they gain, though, by this series with Louisville?
I think they gain a game that people are interested in and are excited about. They played in the last 2 years, once in New York City and once in the Bahamas. This will actually be a game where people will be able to go and see it. And I think one thing you gain is I think regional rivalries are good. They're good for sports. You have overlap in this part of the state for sure, and Louisville fans and Indiana fans where they'll be very excited about this game. It'll mean more down here than it will up in Indianapolis for sure. But I think it's good to play those kind of games, play your regional rivals. And if they don't play Louisville every year and they play Kentucky for 4 years, schedule Cincinnati, schedule Xavier, schedule some other regional teams like that where, it's got a little to me, it's more interesting than playing South Carolina like they played last year or some of these other non-conference games they've scheduled recently.
Yeah, and again, to not only be competitive, but to start winning.
Yeah, I mean, you put pressure on yourself to make your team better and win, because if you schedule games like this consistently, as Woodson did, and get beat, it's not good for your job security. So you self-impose pressure on yourself to say, hey, you got to get your team better so you can win these kinds of games. And if you win them, you help yourself with the NCAA tournament selection committee. That's part of what the benefit is. You play a team that's going to be pretty good, and if you play them close or beat them, then it helps you on Selection Sunday. Instead of, I don't even remember some of the teams they played last year, but none of them were very inspiring. And you're asking people to pay a lot of money to go to these games. You need to give them something that they want to see, in my opinion, instead of just North Florida or Sam Houston State or Chattanooga or whatever. Give them a game that people are going to be talking about. Give them a game that national, I would be shocked if that game in Indianapolis isn't on like CBS or Fox Sports National. It would have to be.
Yeah, and Indiana is also, man, if they're just, I keep calling them a sleeping giant because that's what they are. When you have the fan base that they have, you've got just the Wall Street Journal thing that came out not too long ago that valued Indiana as the third most valued basketball program in the country. It cracks me up when people talked about this earlier, say, well, Indiana's not relevant. Really? That's kind of hard to be the third most valued college basketball program in the United States and not be relevant. They haven't been blue blood-esque I'll give you that. And someone else commented a minute ago that Cisco Sunrise said something about nothing in 38 years or whatever. But if you want to be truthful, in the last 23 years, they've got a Final Four and 2 Big Ten titles. Is that Indiana normally? No. But how many programs is that better than? A lot. But they've got to get back to being in a position where they can compete for these things, where they can possibly get there, get to the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, keep building on the Big Ten tournament. At some point, Indiana needs to win the damn Big Ten tournament.
I agree. I mean, I've heard people say it doesn't matter. It matters to Indiana. It needs to matter where they show that they can do something like that. To me, the first goal has to be to get the program back to where you're Michigan State, Purdue, or Wisconsin. Those are the teams that over the last 15 to 20 years have year in and year out been near the top of the Big Ten, gone to the NCAA tournament every year, and made some runs in the NCAA tournament. Wisconsin getting to the Final Four in 2015 and maybe 14 too. Didn't they go back-to-back years? I think they did. And Purdue getting there last year, and Michigan State getting there, multiple times ever since they won the title in 2000. That's the level that Indiana needs to get to take the first step forward. And then you take the next step after that to become, nationally relevant. But, take the first step of getting back to what you used to be in the Big Ten, not a team that's losing 5 straight to Northwestern and 4 straight to Nebraska and looking bad doing it. And, I don't know how long it's going to take. It shouldn't take as long as it used to take with the transfer portal. And Darian DeVries has gotten some nice pieces so far. But what do they have? 5 players, 6 if you count Goody. You still got half the team to build, so there's a lot of work to do.
You got 2/3. You get 15 spots now,
right,
that you can fill. So those last 2 spots are probably going to be, in essence, they'll get us. I guess they're walk-ons that'll get a scholarship, but you don't have to fill them, I don't think.
Right, because no more walk-ons, right?
Right. So, but you're likely going to fill them if you can say, hey, we'll give you a scholarship, but and here's your 25,000.
You got to be careful, though, because it's impossible to keep 15 real scholarship players happy, and you're ended up.
Oh, no, that's why I'm saying the last guys are just going to be, in essence, glorified walk-ons.
Right.
Or you could use that, and again, a friend of mine, Rusty, brought this up. It wouldn't work for reasons I pointed out to him, but like he thought about using, say, like Evansville for a place to put a freshman or 2 that you were interested in. And I said, it's a good idea in theory. Yes.
Like baseball,
I said, it's a good idea.
AA.
Exactly. I said, that is a great idea in theory, but you can't do that because nobody would be locked down. Let's say they go down there and they blow up. Well, guess what? They're going to talk to Kentucky and Duke and everybody else as well. So
right.
It wouldn't work well in theory, but you could, in effect, use those 14th and 15th spot for something like that and sign them to a multi-year NIL deal if it was someone that you wanted to keep around. Just, thinking outside of the box.
Since we entered the era of holdouts over the weekend, anything's possible. This reminds me of when I was a kid in baseball that Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale held out with the Dodgers and everybody freaked out. Like, what are these players doing? We're going through a major reorganization of the way college athletes are treated, paid, handled, developed. And I don't think we have any idea yet where this is going to end up.
Absolutely. Jason says he loves the optimism, but he thinks Indiana's first season will still be a building year. Well, I got bad news for you. Every year will be a building year. You just don't know how much that's going to be. And especially with this team Indiana's putting together, Darian DeVries has to be careful not to bring in too many guys that have 1 year of eligibility remaining.
Right.
Because if you're doing this all again next year, now you're going to be doing it next year again regardless, but you would sure like to be filling in 5 spots and not 15.
Excuse me. I agree. I mean, I think that's why they brought the guy from North Florida. I think he has 3 years left. And yeah, you gotta create balance between the classes, at least somewhat of it. And who knows? He might still be able to find a high school or decommit guy somewhere. There's a few of them out there. So you have at least 2 freshmen on the team, and then once the portal closes and you got your team, then recruiting will start, and you can build. Yes, I am a right quad. Right quad is still a blue blood. That's where I lived. The goal is to lose maybe 3 or 4 guys a year, not everybody. And so we'll see how he works this out. I mean, I know there's been a lot of chatter about it's going too slow, but I think you got to do it. It's more important to do it right than to do it fast. And
exactly. And you can look at history. Mark Pope, when did he get his first player last year? They were late getting started.
Yeah, he didn't even get the job till like April 10th or 11th. So he was really into it now. So yeah, it'll work out. They'll find the guys, and we'll see what he does. But he needs a couple more big men and probably a point guard, I would think, still. And he's got the shooters. He's got the most important part. I looked at this Wilkerson kid. Everybody talked about his 3-point percentage, but he's also an 82% free throw shooter. When was the last time Indiana had a guy like that?
Not lately, because their guards were all, other than Miles Rice, they shot between 50 and 60-something%. And I don't understand how on God's green earth, as a guard, you shoot 50% from the free throw line. It's just
it's unacceptable is what it is.
No,
it's interesting too to look at where the guys who've left Indiana have gone. Newton went to Georgia State. Is that correct? And then Rice,
and that tells me a lot.
Well, he wants to be back home, and I'm surprised Georgia Tech must not have been interested in him, because that's home too. So Georgia State is where he's going, and maybe he just needs a year to go somewhere where he's going to get to play and prove his value, and he can move up a level after next season. And then Rice has gone to Maryland, correct? And who is anybody else? Mbako, I know, has visited Kentucky and NC State.
Miami, didn't Malik Renew
Miami renews at Miami, and I noticed that Kanan Carlisle visited or was talking to McNeese State. That kind of surprised me. That's also a step down. So,
and a step down with they just lost their coach.
Yeah. But McBacco must not be going to Kentucky, because he visited a long time ago, and they've taken a lot of commitments since then.
Well, they said, "Hey, can you guard this chair?" And he was not able to, and so that ended that.
That wasn't the most concerning thing about. Well,
no, it wasn't. Sadly, it was not. You were correct.
He never would pass the ball. I mean, that's the thing. He was
not a part of the offense.
He was about getting his points and getting his shots. Right?
He was the offense. In his mind, he was not a part of the offense. He was the offense. And then, like you just pointed out, Kanan Carlisle dropping to where this is the guy that probably made $400,000 last year at a minimum.
Did he shoot less than? I'm going to look it up. I think he shot less than 30% from 3, didn't he?
Oh, well, hell yes. He was bad. I think both him, Malik Renew were in the, Malik Renew might have been in the teens.
24.3%.
Yeah.
17 for 70. Wow. I didn't realize it was that bad.
I think that I maybe could do that.
Bryson Tucker was worse, 3 for 20.
The good thing for Indiana fans, they don't have to worry about that anymore.
And I didn't realize Renew took that many. He averaged almost 1 a game. He was 3 for 24.
17?
3 for 24.
What's that percentage wise?
12.5%.
Oh, yes. That's what Indiana had right there. That's what Mike Woodson put on the floor. Seriously, that is what he went out and paid $5 million for, when $5 million meant something a year ago. And that's just ridiculous. Anyway, doesn't matter now. So DeVries is taking his time. This recruit, though, getting Lamar Wilkerson was very important, not just for the player that he is It was important. It made a statement. Like I said, you beat Kentucky and it could have been Duke or anybody else. But when you win a big recruiting battle and
canceled the visit to Auburn.
boy, when that happened, I thought that he was Kentucky bound because he did it after the Kentucky visit. But I didn't see the trip to Keeneland, which I don't know that he's a horse fan. So maybe he'll like bikes better, and they can take him to the Little 500 up here in a few weeks.
You know, the exclamation point on the end of it was that DeVries flew down there yesterday to seal the deal. And for all the conversation we've had over the last 4 years about Mike Woodson not being willing to drive to Greenfield to visit Braylon Mullins, this guy gets on a plane and flies to Sam Houston, which is, I don't know what town it is, but it's not far from College Station. It's down there in southeast Texas. So for him to get up in the morning and fly down there when you got a coach who wouldn't drive to Greenfield enough times to secure a critical recruitment from the best guard prospect in the state in the last decade, that's all you need to know, that Indiana made the right decision moving on from Mike Woodson.
Absolutely, because he mentioned that
yes, he did.
He specifically talked about that. He said it wasn't the pitch, just him as a person. You could tell he was very genuine in what he says. Of course, they always say that. He generally believes in me. Yeah, they say that a lot. But he actually flew out here to come see me. That was big. That was major. I wanted to be a priority, and Indiana makes me feel like a priority. Well, yeah.
That's the way the game's played now, man. That's what you have to do. And we, if anybody learned anything from the Liam McNeely situation, it was even after you recruit him, you got to continue to build the relationship with them and make people feel like they're valued. And in this generation, those guys are conditioned to believe that way. They get treated that way by AAU teams. They get treated that way by high schools, and they expect to get treated that way by college programs. A lot of us who are older might not like it and think it's ridiculous, but that generation doesn't view it that way. And so if you're going to compete and get good players, you need to make them feel valued.
Mike Woodson just had this elitist opinion, though, to me. He was lazy, and he thought he was Bob Knight. He knew how Bob Knight was able to do it. But one thing I guess he did not realize, Bob Knight hung 3 of those 5 banners that are hanging in Simon Scott Assembly Hall, and could have hung others in addition to 10 or 11 Big Ten titles.
Yeah.
You got to have the juice.
And Bob Knight, as the culture and as the world changed, though, I mean, and his players wanted to be treated that way, Bob Knight was not as successful winning because he wasn't good at retaining players. And Mike Woods is not the coach that Bob Knight was. He never was, never will be. And I find it fascinating for any of the Mike Woodson supporters, and there aren't really that many of them. There have been several NBA jobs that have opened, a bunch of college jobs that have opened, and I have not heard his name connect with any of the jobs.
Anytime I hear someone ask, where's Mike Woodson going to end up? I just laugh. I'm like, where the hell do you think he's going to end up? The same place he was before he was going to coach Indiana. Nobody wanted him. Nobody was beating his door down. Who's beating his door down now? Nobody. Quinn Buckner can't offer him a job now. Maybe he'll go to work for the Pacers broadcast team as a.
I think he's probably done well enough that he can play golf.
He's done well enough at Indiana. Hell, they're paying him $8 million to not coach.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen the total final settlement yet. Aren't they still negotiating it? Or at least the way it's going to be paid or whatever. But
I would not see him negotiating it down in any way like Tom Allen did, just because of.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Payne negotiated it down briefly here to get the money quicker. That's the only way. If you need the money quicker, you might have to take a little bit less. But
I don't think he needs it.
No, I don't think he does either. So he's gone now. Move on to the new coach. And
speaking of Kenny Payne, Louisville, Kenny Johnson, former IU assistant, Louisville assistant, now back in Indiana. That was surprising to see for me a little bit, but he was successful as a recruiter, no doubt.
Yes, he was. He was very instrumental, I think, in the recruiting of James Blackman Jr., Thomas Bryant, Noah Vonleh, maybe. I'm not sure about Noah Vonleh, maybe. Yeah, he was in there OG Anunoby. Oh, that was McLean, OG Anunoby. But yeah, he was involved in a bunch of them. So, and I'll tell you one thing: the best player Rick Pitino had in his whole run at Louisville was a Kenny Johnson player, Donovan Mitchell, and that was a huge recruitment. So yeah, he's connected to guys on the East Coast. I was actually surprised that he left Georgetown because he's from the Maryland area to come back to Indiana. But I like Kenny. I got to know him when he was at IU, and then he was here with Rick Pitino. And he is somebody who would drive to Greenfield, Indiana 4 nights a week if he had to, if it meant he was going to get the best player in the state of Indiana.
You mentioned Braylon Mullins. Who is this Braylon Mullins you spoke of? Oh, yes. The guy who lit it up all summer long on the AAU circuit, who was probably earmarked for Indiana, but somehow now it was UConn, but you let a guy who obviously has personality in Danny Hurley. You know, he's going to come in there with all that energy and letting that sparkle off the diamonds from that freshly minted national championship ring talk. And it does talk, no doubt. He's putting guys in the NBA. Mike Woodson has put a couple of guys in, but they were guys that Kel'el Ware, you got to give him credit because I guess out at Oregon, said that they didn't have a motor, yada, yada. Trace Jackson Davis, I didn't think he was going to make it, but it was just the big men. Jalen Hood-Schifino was already Jalen Hood-Schifino. There was no talent developed, what I consider developed. Trace Jackson Davis was already on his way. Kel'el Ware, you got to give him some credit for, I guess, but it's because he got all the attempts, the touches, because that's how the offense ran.
Yeah, I mean, he did some good things with those guys. There's no doubt about it. And he had some big wins. He went 4-4 against Purdue. He did some good things, but the recruiting part of it was, I mean, not good. Not good at all. They went after some big name guys and whiffed on almost all of them. The one big name guy from out of the area that they had, they let him, they just made him mad and watched him go to UConn and have a great year. And they they looked at the best high school class in the state of Indiana a number of years and were lucky to get Trent Sisley, in my opinion, only because his family loves Indiana University, and they were probably assured that if this didn't work out last season, that they'd have a coach that the Sisley family would like, and that's what happened.
Absolutely. Hey, we've got the great Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with us. Make sure you're giving him a follow as well as following the content at WDRB.com sports. Besides Rick, you got the incredible, incomparable Eric Crawford, the silent, the road warrior, Rick's driver, as he is known as at WDRB, Rick's driver. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this beautiful Wednesday in April. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with us. And,
we got some breaking news, man.
All right, lay it on me.
Well, Trilly Donovan, the guy who has a 97% hit rate on commitment predictions, just posted that Tayton Conerway, the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year, a point guard, is going to go to Indiana.
There you go. And
he made his visit yesterday or a couple of days before that, so that gives him a point guard.
Just as I had talked about the commitment of Lamar Wilkerson, I'm not saying that he is the draw, but it's the fact that he was a top want by everybody in the portal. And Indiana got him. They beat Kentucky. That has to carry weight. So now you got, like they're seeing the team start to take shape. And they're like, hey, I want to be a part of that. And I think we'll see more of that. But what happens when you get to so that would give them, we'll stick with the 6 right now and we'll leave Lee Goody out. So that would just give them 6 players. They need 3 or 4 more good players to form that 8 to 9 man rotation. What happens after you hit those 9 guys? How tough is it? Are you just going to take some guys that the people who are chasing him are not as good as your program. I mean, because you're going to have to fill in 5 or 6 spots with guys that you're probably not going to rely on much at all.
I mean, you're going to have to make good decisions on guys who will accept their roles and be part of a culture. And I've said this before. That's the one thing I think that, both Mark Pope and Pat Kelsey did great at Louisville last year. They created really good cultures where the guys who were the 7th or 8th man were good at being the 7th or 8th man and didn't sulk or pout that they weren't playing more or act disengaged. And they did it the way where, they had 3 or 4 guys that played the majority of the minutes, and then the other guys were role guys, and some guys didn't play at all. Whereas Pope did a little bit differently. He spread the minutes more evenly, and they had more injuries and ended up playing 10 or 11 guys. So you just have to make a good decision on more than just the basketball skills of the players. You have to make a decision on the personality of the players and that they will fit into a team environment. And I don't know. I still think they should try and find a high school kid who's decommitted somewhere and try and bring a guy in that they can sort of work on and develop so that you have a more of a foundation for the going forward and not just have to look, be 10 portal guys again.
Yeah, you can't do this every year. I talked about that. That's why I talk about the guys you're bringing in. They cannot be all guys that have 1 year of eligibility left, man. You've got to have some guys that you will hope to have to stay with a combination of success, of playing time. NIL should be fine. And it sucks that I would like to see more 2-year deals personally by guys. You can do that. That's been there to be able to be done since Nigel Pack. His deal was a 2-year deal, but nobody does that now. And I get it, because all you have to do is use last year to this year as an example. The money has more than doubled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And what you have to do is also have success this year. So next year, more people will pay attention to you. And you can, when you're already there, I mean, a lot of these deals they're put in motion in January. I mean, people start knowing who's disgruntled or who's looking around, or you see a guy on another team and say, hey, I really like that guy, have him next year. And you find out who his agent is and see if he's interested. I mean, I think some of this stuff is done in advance. But I guess I'm going to look at it this way, in that when you look at DeVries and you look at Wilkerson and you look at Bailey and possibly Goody, and it's going to be a different kind of Indiana basketball than we've seen since the Crean era, when they had, Zeisloff and Hulls and a bunch of guys, Verdell Jones, guys who could make threes. You're going to have a team next year that's going to actually prioritize shooting 3-point shots and shoot them proficiently. You're going to have that, because that's the kind of players that he's recruiting. And if he can find a couple of good, solid big men who can defend the paint and, rebound, make it more interesting. And in some ways, I think that, they've got a chance to change the dynamic in the Big Ten, because when you look at the Big Ten, Michigan State doesn't play that way. Purdue doesn't really play that way. Wisconsin played a little bit more that way this year. Greg Gard changed his system, but when you looked at the basketball this year of like the teams in the SEC compared to the Big Ten, the SEC teams were playing more of that style of threes and dunks, threes and layups. All the other stuff, not important. Don't be taking these mid-range shots. And I think that's what DeVries is going to do. And, maybe he's got a chance to find an inefficiency in the Big Ten and take advantage of it with a team that's really prolific and emphasizing the 3-point shot.
And that's why I think that the product is going to be just more fun, period. But it is going to be a modern game, and it's going to be more attractive to more players in the future as you go on. The funner the game is, the more they're going to want to come, because the other stuff is there. The NIL, it's there.
I go back to the early Patino days. He was one of the first guys to really embrace the 3-point shot, not to as much as it is now. But when you'd watch his Kentucky teams and they would get on a run of hitting 2, 3, 4 3-point shots in a 4 or 5 minute stretch, the crowd goes crazy. We've seen it at IU. If you ever have a game when a team hits 2 or 3 shots in a row, you really get the crowd's feed off that. And I think the Indiana fan base has been so starved for watching an entertaining offense that if they see this team play that way and they have success, the place is going to be filled, and it's going to be – the atmosphere is going to get back to the way it used to be.
And I said that earlier, that Assembly Hall, amazingly enough, Indiana fans they've been there no matter what, through all the crap. I mean, at the end of Archie Miller and at the end of Mike Woodson, they were tired. Everybody was tired. Who wasn't tired? Hell, the team was tired. Everybody was tired of the crap. You can only take it for so long, but they were still there.
Well, people were cynical. I mean, Woodson said he was going to change the way they played, and a lot of people didn't believe it in the first place, and the ones that did gave him a chance to show it, and it wasn't changed. I mean, he finally changed it this year after they were losing and went with a lineup that had Goody and Leal.
That happened, but he was forced to do that because that's when Renew got hurt.
But he said he was going to do it before the season, and he had no intention of doing it. Nope. You know, I mean, that's what I think annoyed a lot of people, of like, don't lie to us. It's not a stupid fan base. And they can look around and see. It was obvious during the NCAA tournament when you watch the teams that played a different way. It's a whole different brand of basketball. And it's the modern game. You might not like it, but it's the way the modern game is played. And Indiana was not playing the modern game.
What is up next for you, sir?
Oh, I'm starting to get ready for Derby stuff. I'll probably head out to Churchill Downs. We'll be 2 weeks away from the Derby on Saturday. NFL draft next week. Obviously, Louisville's got a couple of players who should be taken no later than the second day, and quarterback Tyler Shuck and defensive lineman Ashton Gelati. I'll be interesting to see where Curtis Rourke goes. He'll probably be a third-day guy. I know IU has a spring game tomorrow, so a lot of stuff going on.
Tons of it, and yeah, I did not realize the Derby was just 2 weeks away, man.
Yep.
Obviously, the trip to Keeneland didn't work out for Lamar Wilkerson. I guess he didn't have a winner, baby. Got to send in my credentials.
I'm going to leave that one alone.
I wonder if they tried to get him to be a jockey and ride one. That would have been something.
It's dangerous work, Jim. Dangerous.
It is, absolutely. Rick Bozich, the captain from WDRB.com. Make sure you're giving him a follow, keeping up with his content. It is all spectacular. Thank you, my friend, as always.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Have a great week.
You too, sir. I'll see you soon. That's going to wrap it up for us today from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. Another fun day. It's always fun with you guys. We couldn't do it without you. Grateful for each and every one of you. Back tomorrow to do it again. Hopefully this voice holds out. Feels like it's going south on me, but appreciate you guys. Go out and have yourselves a great day. We're back tomorrow ahead of Indiana's football spring game tomorrow night, and we'll have a post-game show from that for you as well. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Hello, everyone. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you, as always, for listening to our content. But for more in-depth coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers football, basketball, and recruiting news, go to thehoosier.com on 3. Now with On 3 and great national writers like Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples, and Steve Wiltfong for football, Pete Nakos, J.B. Shaw, and Joe Tipton's constantly breaking stories on the basketball side. And the local coverage from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and Zach Browning. You can catch something new every day at thehoosier.com. Go there. Sign up today.